Captain Zareth floated in the crystal chamber of her ship, her blue skin glowing softly as she connected her mind to the ship's sensors. The Serenity's Dawn had been exploring the outer rim of the galaxy for 3 months now, mapping new star systems for the Galactic Council. It was peaceful work, the kind that made her telepathic abilities feel calm and centered. She had expected to find nothing more than empty space and dead rocks in this remote corner of the galaxy. The Council had sent her here precisely because it was so far from civilized space. No intelligent life had ever been detected in this region, and the energy readings were always quiet and stable. That was why the signal hit her like a lightning bolt. Zareth jerked back from the sensor connection, her mind reeling from the chaotic burst of energy she had just detected. Her ship's crystal walls flickered with alarm patterns as the harmonious energy field around her wavered. She had never felt anything like it in her 200 years of exploration. The signal came from a small yellow star system, third planet. From the sun, the readings made no sense at all. The energy patterns were wild, aggressive, and completely random. They pulsed with emotions she couldn't identify, thoughts that moved in directions her mind couldn't follow. She tried to analyze the data, but every time she focused on it, her telepathic abilities recoiled. Whatever was producing these signals thought in ways that were completely alien to everything the Council had ever encountered. The thoughts were sharp, violent, and filled with something that felt like controlled chaos. Zareth activated her communication system and sent an urgent message back to the Council homeworld. The transmission would take weeks to reach them, but this discovery was too important to delay. She had found something that might change everything they knew about life in the galaxy. 3 weeks later, on the crystal world of Valder Prime, Elder Mordnine received the transmission. His ancient crystal form had stood in the council chambers for over 1,000 years, serving as a bridge between the peaceful species of the galaxy. He had seen the rise and fall of civilizations, guided young species toward harmony, and helped maintain peace across 17 star systems. But as he absorbed Zareth's data, his crystal structure began to dim with concern. The energy patterns were unlike anything in the Council's vast databases. They showed signs of high intelligence, but the thought processes were completely foreign. Where Council species thought in smooth, harmonious patterns, these new signals were jagged and unpredictable. Elder Morton called an emergency session of the Council. Representatives from all 17 member species gathered in the Great Crystal Chamber, their various forms of communication creating a peaceful symphony of shared understanding. The aquatic Nerians floated in their water-filled viewing spheres, while the energy-based Etherians flickered like living stars around the chamber's edges. Council leader Valtar, a Zephyrian like Zareth, but much older, examined the data with growing alarm. Her telepathic abilities were among the strongest in the Council, but even she couldn't make sense of the chaotic thought patterns. A signal seemed to show a species that actually embraced conflict and disorder. "These readings are impossible," Valtar announced to the assembled Council. No intelligent species could survive with such chaotic mental patterns. Yet the energy signatures are clearly artificial and organized. We are looking at a technological civilization that thinks in ways we cannot comprehend. The Valdorian crystal beings hummed with concern, their harmonic frequencies creating waves of unease throughout the chamber. The Nerians retreated deeper into their water spheres, their peaceful nature disturbed by the violent energy patterns in the data. Meanwhile, on the third planet of that distant yellow star system, Lieutenant Commander Alex Kane sat in front of his monitoring station at the Arecibo Deep Space Array. Earth's most advanced radio telescope had been scanning the skies for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence for decades. But Alex had never expected to find anything during his routine night shift. The signal appeared on his screen at exactly 2:47 a.m. It was clearly artificial, a complex mathematical pattern that repeated every few minutes. Alex's heart raced as he realized what he was seeing. This was it. This was the signal that humanity had been waiting for. He immediately contacted Dr. Rachel Stone, Earth's leading expert in xenobiology and communication theory. Rachel had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, studying how humans might communicate with alien intelligence. She had written papers on mathematical languages, universal constants, and the challenges of cross-species communication. When Alex's call woke her at 3:15 a.m., Rachel was instantly alert. She had been dreaming about first contact scenarios for years, and now it was actually happening. She threw on her clothes and drove to the facility as fast as she could. "Show me everything," Rachel said as she burst into the control room. Alex pulled up the signal data on the main screen, and Rachel studied it with intense concentration. The mathematical patterns were clearly intelligent, but there was something strange about them. They seemed almost too peaceful, too harmonious. "This isn't random," she said after several minutes of analysis. "This is definitely a message. But look at the structure. It's like whoever sent this thinks in perfect mathematical harmony. There's no chaos, no randomness, no individual variation. It's like the signal came from a collective mind." What Rachel didn't know was that her thoughts were being monitored. The Serenity's dawn was still in the outer system, and Zareth was using her ship's advanced sensors to study the strange energy source. Every time Rachel analyzed the alien signal, her own thought patterns were being recorded and transmitted back to the Council. The Galactic Council was learning about humanity, the same way humanity was learning about them. But where humans saw the alien signal as peaceful and organized, the aliens saw human thoughts as chaotic and terrifying. Dr. Rachel Stone's mind worked in ways that horrified Zareth. Where Council species thought in collective harmony, Rachel's thoughts jumped between ideas, challenged assumptions, and explored possibilities that seemed dangerous and unpredictable. Her mind entertained violent scenarios, competitive strategies, and individual desires that were completely foreign to galactic civilization. As the days passed, more human scientists joined the project. Dr. Stone assembled a team of linguists, mathematicians, and communications experts to decode the alien message. Each new human mind that focused on the signal sent fresh waves of chaotic energy through space, and each one was detected and recorded by the watching aliens. The humans were trying to understand the alien message, but they had no idea that they were simultaneously sending a message of their own. Every thought, every emotion, every wild idea that crossed their minds was being transmitted across the galaxy, causing panic and confusion among species that had forgotten what individual thinking looked like. The first contact between humanity and the Galactic Council had begun, but neither side understood what was really happening. The humans thought they were receiving a peaceful greeting from wise aliens. The aliens thought they had discovered a species of violent, chaotic beings, whose very thoughts were a threat to galactic peace. The stage was set for the most disastrous first contact in galactic history. Ambassador Veltar stood in the center of the Eternal Peace, the Council's most advanced diplomatic vessel. The ship was built from living crystal that could channel the collective consciousness of its crew, creating a harmony field that extended for thousands of miles in all directions. For 3,000 years, this ship had carried peace to every corner of the galaxy. Now it was heading toward a small blue planet that might change everything. The Eternal Peace moved through space without engines, propelled by the combined will of its crew. 50 representatives from different council species had volunteered for this mission, each one trained in the delicate art of first contact. They had done this many times before, always with success. Veltar had personally guided 17 different species into the galactic community. She knew how to calm primitive fears, how to ease the shock of learning about the wider galaxy, and how to help young civilizations abandon their violent ways. This mission should have been no different, but as they approached the Sol system, something felt wrong. The chaotic energy patterns were getting stronger, and they seemed to be coming from multiple sources across the planet. Veltar had expected to find a single source of intelligence, perhaps a small group of advanced beings who could speak for their entire species. Instead, she found billions of individual minds, each one thinking in its own chaotic pattern. "This is impossible," whispered Kethvor, the ship's military advisor. He was a former Dreknari warrior who had given up violence centuries ago to join the council. His 6 arms trembled as he studied the sensor readings. No species can survive with this level of mental chaos. They should have destroyed themselves long ago. The Eternal Peace entered Earth's solar system, broadcasting the standard first contact message. Mathematical sequences that demonstrated peaceful intent, followed by universal constants that showed their level of scientific understanding. The message was designed to be calming and reassuring, the same message that had worked perfectly for 3 millennia. On Earth, Admiral Jake Morrison was having the worst day of his military career. The alien ship had appeared on their sensors 12 hours ago, and every military installation on the planet was on high alert. The ship was massive, almost 20 miles long, and it was broadcasting signals that their computers couldn't decode. Admiral Morrison was a practical man who had spent 30 years in the United Earth Defense Force. He had fought in 3 wars and commanded space stations on the edge of the solar system. He knew how to handle threats, how to assess enemy capabilities, and how to protect his planet. But this was different. This was first contact with an alien civilization, and he had no idea what they wanted. Dr. Rachel Stone worked frantically in the communication center, trying to decode the alien transmissions. The mathematical patterns were incredibly complex, but she was beginning to see a structure. The aliens were trying to communicate, and their message seemed peaceful. "Admiral, I think they're trying to say hello," Rachel reported over the communication. "Link, the mathematical sequences are getting more complex, but they're building on basic concepts. They're showing us that they understand physics, chemistry, and mathematics. This is exactly what we hoped first contact would look like." Admiral Morrison nodded, but he kept his weapon systems ready. "What do we send back, Doctor?" "We need to respond, but we have to be careful. One wrong move could start a war." Rachel had been preparing for this moment her entire career. She had written protocols for first contact, studied every possible scenario, and dreamed about the day when humanity would join the galactic community. Now it was happening, and she felt the weight of history on her shoulders. "We send them everything," she said. "Mathematics, physics, our periodic table, our star charts. But we also send them who we are. Our music, our art, our literature. We show them what makes us human." President Lisa Campbell gave the authorization from the White House Situation Room. Earth's response would be transmitted from every major radio telescope on the planet, a coordinated effort that would show the aliens that humanity was united in this historic moment. The message that left: Earth was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It started with the mathematical sequences the aliens expected, but then it expanded into something that horrified the watching council. The humans sent their music first. Symphonies that soared with individual emotion, rock songs that celebrated rebellion and freedom, and folk songs that told stories of struggle and survival. Each piece of music was created by individual humans expressing their own thoughts and feelings, concepts that were completely alien to the collective consciousness of the council. Then came the literature. Stories of humans fighting against impossible, odds refusing to surrender even when defeat seemed certain. Tales of individual heroes who stood alone against overwhelming forces and won through determination and courage. Epic poems about war and conflict, presented not as tragedies to be avoided, But as glorious struggles that defined what it meant to be human, the historical records were even worse. The humans had sent documentation of their wars, their revolutions, their refusal to accept peace when peace meant surrender. They had sent recordings of their greatest speeches, words that inspired millions to fight for freedom and independence. On the Eternal Peace, the crew was in shock. Ambassador Veltar had retreated to her meditation chamber, trying to process what she had experienced. The human cultural package had been transmitted directly into her consciousness, and every piece of it violated everything she believed about intelligent life. Elder Morden, who had remained connected to the ship's communication system, fell into a deep crystal hibernation. His ancient mind couldn't handle the chaotic energy patterns of human emotion. The concept of glorifying individual struggle over collective harmony was so alien to his nature that his consciousness simply shut down to protect itself. Dr. Stone waited eagerly for a response from the alien ship, but the silence stretched on for hours. She had expected immediate communication, perhaps even an invitation to meet face to face. Instead, the alien ship seemed to have gone completely quiet. "Maybe they're processing our message," she said to Admiral Morrison. "We sent them a lot of information. They might need time to translate it all." What she didn't know was that the aliens weren't translating the message. They were recovering from it. The Eternal Peace's crew was in complete disorder, their peaceful minds shattered by exposure to human culture. Species that had never experienced individual thought were now struggling with emotions they had no names for. The ship's harmony field was flickering and unstable. The crystal walls were showing stress patterns that hadn't been seen in centuries. The crew was experiencing something that their peaceful civilization had no words for. They were having nightmares. Keffer was the first to recover. His warrior heritage gave him some resistance to the chaotic human emotions, but even he was shaken by what he had experienced. The humans didn't just accept conflict, they celebrated it. They turned their struggles into art, their wars into stories, their individual achievements into legends. "We have to warn the Council," he said to Veltar when she finally emerged from her meditation chamber. "These humans are not like anything we've encountered before. They're not just chaotic, they're dangerous. Their very existence threatens everything we've built." Veltar nodded slowly. She had spent her entire career helping violent species find peace, but the humans were different. They had found peace, and then they had rejected it. They had chosen struggle over harmony, conflict over cooperation, individual achievement over collective consciousness. The Eternal Peace began to retreat from Earth's solar system, but not before sending an emergency message to the Council. The message was simple and terrifying. The Chaos species is real, and they're everything we feared they would be. The news spread through the Galactic Communication Network like wildfire. Within days of the Eternal Peace's return, every species in the Council knew about the Chaos species from the Outer Rim. The official report was classified, but rumors traveled faster than official channels. Commander Ben Hayes had no idea that his mission was causing panic across the galaxy. He stood on the bridge of the New Horizons, humanity's first interstellar vessel, watching the stars stream past as they traveled toward what their scientists believed would be their first diplomatic meeting with an alien civilization. The New Horizons had launched 6 months after the failed first contact attempt. Earth's governments had decided that if the aliens wouldn't come to them, humanity would go to the aliens. The ship carried a crew of 200, including diplomats, scientists, and military personnel. It was humanity's best effort to join. The Galactic Community. Dr. Rachel Stone served as the mission's chief scientific advisor. She had spent months preparing for this moment, studying the alien mathematical sequences and developing new communication protocols. She was certain that the first contact had simply been a misunderstanding that could be cleared up with face-to-face meetings. "We should reach the Kepler system in 3 days," Commander Hayes announced to his senior staff. "Intelligence suggests there's a major alien civilization there. If we're lucky, we might even find their capital world." What Commander Hayes didn't know was that the Kepler system had been evacuated 2 weeks earlier. The moment the Crystalline Confederacy detected the approaching human ship, they had triggered their emergency protocols and fled to their backup colonies in the Vega sector. The Confederacy had built their civilization around shared crystal consciousness. Their cities were designed for collective thinking, with crystal networks that allowed thousands of individuals to share thoughts and emotions. The idea of chaotic human minds entering their space was terrifying beyond words. Captain Maya Torres led the ship's survey team. She was a former Marine who had volunteered for the mission because she wanted to be part of history. She had studied every piece of alien technology they had detected, and she was eager to see an alien civilization. Up close. As the New Horizons entered the Kepler system, the crew was amazed by what they found. Massive space stations orbited the outer planets, their crystal structures gleaming in the light of the system's twin stars. Cities covered entire continents on 3 different worlds, their geometric patterns visible from orbit. But there were no ships, no communication signals, no signs of life anywhere in the system. "It's like they all just disappeared," Maya reported from the survey shuttle as she flew over one of the abandoned cities. "The buildings are intact, the technology is still running, but there's nobody here. It's like they evacuated the entire system." Dr. Stone studied the readings from the surface. The alien cities were beautiful, built from living crystal that pulsed with soft light. The architecture was designed for harmony and collective consciousness, with no individual dwellings or private spaces. Everything was shared, everything was connected. "They left in a hurry," she reported to Commander Hayes. "There's still food. In their communal eating areas, still energy flowing through their crystal networks. Whatever made them leave, it happened fast." The crew spent a week exploring the abandoned Kepler system, documenting everything they found. The alien technology was incredibly advanced, but it was all designed around collective consciousness and shared thinking. There were no individual workstations, no private communication channels, no signs of the individual achievement that defined human civilization. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was meeting in emergency session on Valder Prime. Elder Morden had finally awakened from his crystal hibernation, but his recovery was slow and painful. The exposure to human thoughts had damaged his ability to connect with the collective consciousness. "The Chaos species has launched a ship," reported Ambassador Veltar to the assembled council. "Our long-range sensors detected it leaving their home system 6 months ago. It's heading directly toward our outer colonies." The council chamber filled with waves of fear and concern. The aquatic Nereans retreated deeper into their protective spheres, while the energy-based Etherians flickered with anxiety. No one knew what to do about a species that seemed immune to their peaceful influence. "We must warn all our colonies," announced Council Leader Tefmer, an ancient Etherian whose energy form had witnessed the birth of the galactic civilization. "Any world in the path of the Chaos species must be evacuated immediately. We cannot risk contamination." The evacuation orders went out across the galaxy. Entire star systems began relocating their populations, moving away from the projected path of the human ship. The panic was spreading faster than the humans could travel. On the New Horizons, Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Foster was becoming frustrated with their diplomatic mission. Every system they approached had been abandoned. Every attempt at communication was met with silence. It was as if the entire galaxy was running away from them. "Maybe we're approaching this wrong," he suggested to Commander Hayes during their daily briefing. "Maybe we should try making contact with their military forces instead of their diplomats. Soldier-to-soldier communication might work better." "Commander," Hayes shook his head. There are no military forces, Colonel. Every scan we've done shows the same thing. These species have no armies, no weapons, no defensive systems. They seem to have completely abandoned the concept of warfare. Dr. Stone found this information fascinating. A galaxy without war, she mused. Think about what that means. These species have achieved something humanity has never managed. They found true peace. What she didn't understand was that the peace came at a cost. The galactic species had given up individual thinking, personal achievement, and the drive to overcome challenges. They had chosen harmony over growth, collective consciousness over individual excellence. The human ship continued its journey through the galaxy, leaving a trail of evacuated systems behind it. Each world they approached was abandoned before. They arrived, the inhabitants fleeing to safer locations deeper in council space. The situation became even worse when Earth's entertainment broadcasts began reaching the inner systems. The radio and television, signals that humanity had been transmitting into space for decades, were finally traveling deep enough into the galaxy to reach the core worlds. The Narians were the first to detect the signals. Their aquatic cities were equipped with sensitive receivers that could pick up electromagnetic radiation from across the galaxy. When they began decoding the human broadcasts, they discovered something that horrified them even more than the diplomatic messages. The humans weren't just accepting conflict, they were entertaining themselves with it. Their fictional stories were filled with wars, competitions, individual heroes who fought against impossible odds. They had created entire industries around the concept of struggle and conflict. Movies about humans fighting alien invasions, books about soldiers who refused to surrender, television shows about individuals competing against each other for prizes and recognition. The entertainment broadcasts revealed a species that had turned conflict into art and competition into culture. The panic spread through the council worlds like a plague. Species that had never experienced individual thought began having nightmares about human entertainment. The concept of enjoying conflict was so alien to their nature that many individuals couldn't process it. Without psychological damage, Elder Morden called for extreme measures. We must establish a quarantine zone around the chaos species, he announced to the council. No ship must be allowed to enter or leave their territory. We cannot risk their mental contamination spreading any further. The council voted unanimously to establish the quarantine. A fleet of Harmony ships was dispatched to surround human space, their mission to prevent any human vessel from reaching the peaceful worlds of the inner galaxy. But it was already too late. The idea of the chaos species had taken hold in the galactic consciousness, and some species were beginning to ask dangerous questions. What if the humans were right? What if struggle and conflict were necessary for growth? What if the peace they had achieved was actually a form of stagnation? The Galactic Council convened for what many believed would be their most important session in 3,000 years. A great crystal chamber on Valder Prime was filled with representatives from every peaceful species in the galaxy, all gathered to discuss what they now called the human problem. Elder Mordneen stood at the center of the chamber, his crystal form still flickering with instability from his exposure to human thoughts. Around him, the other council members radiated waves of concern and fear. The quarantine had been in place for 6 months, but the damage was already spreading. The chaos species must be contained, Elder Morden announced to the assembled delegates. Their mental contamination is spreading through our younger generations. We have reports of individual thinking appearing in 12 different systems. Ambassador Veltar nodded gravely. The Etherian youth colonies have begun asking questions about personal achievement. The young Nereans are refusing to share consciousness with their elders. Even some of our own Zephyrian children are experimenting with private thoughts. What the council didn't know was that one member of their assembly was listening with growing interest rather than fear. Commander Kethfer, the former Draknari warrior, had spent months studying the human cultural transmissions. Unlike the other council members, he found the human concept of beneficial conflict fascinating rather than terrifying. The Draknari had once been the galaxy's greatest warriors, but they had given up their warrior culture centuries ago to join the peaceful council. Kethfer had always felt something was missing from his life, and the human broadcasts had reminded him what it was. The thrill of challenge, the satisfaction of individual achievement, the growth that came from overcoming obstacles. On Earth, President Lisa Campbell was preparing to address the galaxy directly. The quarantine had prevented human ships from making contact with alien worlds, but it couldn't stop radio transmissions. Earth's most powerful broadcast array was ready to send humanity's first official statement to the galactic community. Doctor Rachel Stone had helped write the speech, drawing on everything they had learned about alien psychology from their failed diplomatic encounters. She knew that humans were seen as chaotic and dangerous, but she also suspected that some aliens might be curious about human philosophy. "We know you're listening," President Campbell began. Her voice carried across the galaxy by quantum communication arrays. "We know you think we're dangerous, that our thoughts are chaotic and destructive. We understand why you're afraid of us." The speech was being monitored by council stations throughout the galaxy. In the great chamber on Valda Prime, the council, members listened in horrified fascination as the human leader continued. "But we want you to understand something about humanity," President Campbell said. "We don't embrace conflict because we enjoy destruction. We embrace challenge because it makes us stronger. We don't celebrate war because we love violence. We celebrate the courage to stand up for what we believe in." Commander Kethfer felt something stirring in his warrior heart as he listened to the human words. The president was describing concepts that his people had once understood, ideas that had been buried under centuries of enforced peace. "Every species in this galaxy has achieved peace by avoiding conflict," the president continued. "You've eliminated struggle, challenge, and competition. But in doing so, you've also eliminated growth. You've chosen safety over strength, harmony over excellence." Elder Morden's crystal form began to pulse with alarm. These were exactly the dangerous ideas he had feared the humans would spread. The concept that peace might not be the highest goal was heretical to everything the council believed. "We offer you a different path," President Campbell said. "Not the path of endless war, but the path of controlled challenge. Competition that builds character, struggle that creates strength, conflict that leads to growth rather than destruction." The speech was having an unexpected effect across the galaxy. On the water worlds of the Narration Empire, young aquatic beings were beginning to question why they had never been allowed to explore beyond their communal cities. In the crystal networks of the Valdorian Confederacy, individuals were wondering what it would feel like to have private thoughts. Most significantly, on the frontier worlds where younger species had recently joined the council, the human message was being received with excitement rather than fear. The merchants of Kepler Prime, who had always felt constrained by the council's restrictions on individual enterprise, saw the human philosophy as liberation from centuries of stagnation. Commander Ben Hayes received the first positive response to humanity's diplomatic efforts when the Wanderer fleet, a group of young explorers who had never fully embraced the council's peaceful philosophy, agreed to meet with human representatives at a neutral location in deep space. The meeting took place aboard a joint human-alien station that was hastily constructed in the void between star systems. Commander Hayes and Dr. Rachel Stone represented humanity, while the aliens sent a diverse group of younger species who were curious about human culture. "We have been watching your broadcasts," said Captain Zertek of the Wanderer fleet, a reptilian being whose species had joined the council only 50 years earlier. "Your entertainment confuses us, but it also excites us. You show beings who overcome impossible challenges through individual effort. This is not something we see in Council. Space. Dr. Stone smiled. That's because individual achievement requires individual risk. Your species have eliminated risk, but they've also eliminated the possibility of exceptional accomplishment. The meeting was a success. For the first time since first contact, humans and aliens were communicating without fear or misunderstanding. The younger alien species found human philosophy refreshing rather than terrifying. Back in Council space, the effects of the human influence were becoming impossible to ignore. Commander Cuthver stood before the Council and made an announcement that shocked the peaceful assembly. "I am resigning from the Council," he declared. "The humans have reminded me of what my people once were and what we gave up when we chose. Perpetual peace. I am returning to the warrior traditions of my ancestors, not to make war, but to embrace the challenge of growth." His words triggered a cascade of similar declarations across the galaxy. The captain of an Etherian exploration ship announced that she was going to explore dangerous regions of space that had been forbidden by the Council. A group of young Nereans declared their intention to leave their communal cities and establish individual colonies. Most shocking of all, a faction of Zephyrians announced that they were going to experiment with human-style individual consciousness, temporarily severing their connections to the collective mind to experience private thoughts. Elder Morden realized that the human nightmare had become a galactic awakening. The Chaos species hadn't conquered the galaxy through force. They had conquered it through ideas. The concept of beneficial struggle was spreading like wildfire through species that had forgotten what it meant to grow through challenge. 6 months later, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the first joint human-alien exploration vessel. The ship was crewed by humans working alongside reformed Draknari warriors, independent-minded Etherians, and young aliens from a dozen different species who had chosen growth over stagnation. Their mission was to explore the dangerous regions of the galaxy that the Council had declared off-limits for centuries. They would face unknown challenges, overcome impossible obstacles, and push the boundaries of what was possible. Captain Maya Torres established the first mixed colony on a frontier world, where humans and aliens worked together to build something new. The colony was a place where individual achievement was celebrated, where healthy competition drove innovation, and where controlled conflict led to growth rather than destruction. The galaxy would never be the same. The nightmare of human contact had become the catalyst for the greatest philosophical revolution in galactic history. Species that had stagnated for millennia were rediscovering the joy of challenge, the satisfaction of individual accomplishment, and the strength that came from overcoming obstacles. Elder Mordnin's crystal form finally stabilized as he came to a new understanding. Perhaps the Chaos species weren't the nightmare after all. Perhaps the real nightmare had been a galaxy too afraid of conflict to grow, too obsessed with peace to achieve greatness. The humans had shown them a different path, not through conquest, but through example. The galaxy was no longer peaceful, but it was alive again, growing and changing and reaching for heights that had been forgotten for thousands of years.